Welcome to the Boomer Briefing Podcast, where we help you solve a critical business issue in 20 minutes or less. I'm your host, Jon Hubbard, shareholder and consultant here at Boomer Consulting. And with me today is Sandra Wiley. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Jon. Good to see you.
Sandra is a shareholder and consultant here at Boomer Consulting and our president. Shouldn't forget that. And so she has been on our podcast many times before, so I'm sure her voice sounds familiar to many of you. And we have a special guest today, and that is Nathan Eads with the Lally Group. Nathan, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. Nathan is a shareholder at the Lally Group and a consultant, and he spends most of his time helping clients in the area of strategic planning and visioning, general business consulting, assurance, tax, and probably a host of other services as well. And this is actually part two of a two-part episode here, and that is around the move to consulting. So the first part of our episode, part one, we really started to talk about, Nathan, your move into consulting, the path you took, that you chose to take, how you were focused on the success of your clients, how you were marrying that with the goals of the firm to really offer some high value add services, and you chose strategic planning for that. Now we want to spend this episode, or this kind of part two, diving into a little bit more detail of your story. So we ended the last episode really talking about one of the first things that you did when you left our certified consultant training was to go back to your partner group back at the firm and cast a vision for how this is beneficial to your clients and how it is beneficial to the firm. So starting with that in mind, you then begin speaking with clients about this service, about strategic planning. And you probably have done that prior to the training, right? With your experience in kind of helping firms chart a future, but now you have something maybe a little more formalized in terms of how you can help them. So share with us kind of that experience as you started to speak with clients about this service, and what was their response?
Sure. So the first thing that I ended up starting to do is just talking with my partner group. Here's a couple of clients that are pretty forward-thinking people. They're seasoned. They've been able to see different things in the business community. And so with that in mind, I started with basically bringing an outline of what a strategic plan would maybe look like and what the deliverables would be at the end. And just to be able to say, hey, this is a service that we're looking at rolling out. You have a sharp mind. You've seen things like this perhaps in the past. What are your thoughts on this type of service and Lally Group starting to have this type of service? And that was basically just an open conversation to be able to see what their thoughts were on it. And it was fascinating because although I would go through the scenario of this is what we're looking for in general for a service to be provided, it almost every time it did not take too long for that conversation to turn to, oh, I would like to talk about this for us. And I'd be like, well, that's great, but it's not even really rolling out yet. We're just trying to gather information. So it was interesting that just trying to get feedback on the service itself automatically led into the conversation of trying to tailor strategic planning for the person that I was talking to actually just get advice from.
Right. And that kind of highlights your client-centric approach to not over-prescribing something that maybe they're not interested in, but being willing to get on the phone with them with a framework in place to have a conversation and pull out from them what exactly they need in that. So I think that's really wise on your part, Nathan. Sandra, one phrase we use a little bit here at Boomer is, and we kind of say it as a joke, but there's a lot of truth to it. And that is sell the tickets and produce the show. And all that means is, hey, before you overproduce something, speak with kind of the target clients that get it, that are sharp, that are, looking to grow their business. And if you have conversations early on, then you will benefit from their perspective as you can go back and produce exactly what they need. Can you speak to that, Sandra, in how that process has been successful for you?
Absolutely. There's many stories like that. But a lot of times what will happen is any one of us as consultants will sit down with a valued client and start just asking them questions about, what's going on in your firm and what's happening. And I will, the famous story at Boomer is Gary was the one that did it one day, and it was brilliant. And it was one of those things where you just went, that was amazing. He sat down with the client, he starts writing down all the things that they wanted out of a program and the training that they needed. And at the end, he said, oh, we have that. And then they called me to tell me that they were going to sign up for this training. And I was like, my eyes, I'm sure, were this big around. And I said, and I didn't tell them that. I mean, I went, oh, sure, no problem. And at the end of the day, I called Gary and he said, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you. We're going to create that. So it's the same thing. We're going to figure it out first, what they need. Then we're going to create all the things that we need. Because you get confident enough about yourself that I can create the process and I can create the materials and I can create the experience. What you have to know is what they want. And so the most important part of all that is the communication. And Nathan, what you did was brilliant because you just sat down to have a conversation, not to try to sell anything, but just to figure out what they needed. What would they be interested in? And then it became natural, right? Just to say, oh, we can help you with that. So I think I love that approach. And I think you have to practice it a little bit because this profession has a tendency to want to create the entire experience and the whole process and every little piece of it before they'll take it out to present it to a client. That's exactly the opposite of what maybe a consultant should do. So it's an interesting process, right?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's what we ended up doing. We spent the scheduled time just to talk about the service and possibly bringing it out. And at the end, you're like, no, we need to talk about this more. And I was like, oh, that's great, but you have another meeting coming up. Let's set up a separate time to specifically talk about your company and the things that you want to try and work on. And so that just allowed for a separate conversation to happen, and then a lot of thinking, and for them and for us, in that middle time to be able to come up with a better solution for them.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting because we sometimes might think that, oh, I need to have A through Z figured out before I even start to talk to the client about it. But it's actually more client centric to do the opposite, get a framework in place, get some ducks in a row, but then engage them in a conversation, spend more time asking them questions and pulling the knowledge and the needs from them and the wants from them. That's more beneficial to your client than having some sort of polished program and PowerPoint slide deck that you want to just throw a bunch of information at them. So, Nathan, again, you're taking the client-centric approach. So as you've been delivering this service to your clients, share with us some of the feedback you've been getting. It's one thing to talk to a client about it and them saying, oh my goodness, I really want this. It's another thing for them to experience it and the value they receive from it. So could you share with us any of the feedback or the results you've heard from clients?
Right. I guess there's a couple things that come to mind that stick out, and that is the framework that we use. It just allows for people to think about areas that weren't on their radar. A lot of times when a company, and particularly the leaders in the company, come into a strategic plan, they have probably 2 or 3 things that are like, these are musts. But there's a lot of other things that they don't realize until other people in the organization really start to talk about them. So that's been interesting to see, along with just, there's a lot of solutions within your organization. You just have to the dots aren't connected. And by hitting that pause button and just having time to be able to get together as a group, you'll find that, this person over here knows exactly what you need over there, and they'll be able to provide that. And I suppose that part of it's just the speed of which we do life now, but people just need time to think and pause and to see what you really want to do. And when you block out that time for the strategic planning, we've just built it into the framework to allow that time to think. And then those three things, I see it every time that we go in and do it, is they just come out.
Right. Sandra, I know you probably agree with Nathan on some of those takeaways and impact you see the clients having. What are some of your favorite kind of impacts you've had on clients as it pertains to strategic planning?
I love, Nathan, what you said about it's forcing them to take time to think. And I think that is so important. We are running and gunning in most businesses so fast that finding the time just to stop and really think about the business is ridiculously hard. So I think that's always a time that I feel good about afterwards when they say, oh my gosh, this has been exhausting, but this has been such a great couple of days just to really step back from the day to day. So I always think that's interesting. I also love it when the firm gets the aha moment. And you never know when it's going to come, and you never know in what form it's going to come, but somewhere during the couple of days you're with them, something happens and somebody asks a question, or I ask a question, or I go, why did you do that? And there's that light bulb that goes on in a partner or a manager or a team member's head, and they go, oh my gosh, why are we doing that? Or what should we be doing about that? Or, oh my gosh, we never thought about that. Those are the most rewarding times, because you know that you found, it's like being at a doctor's appointment or something, you found the pain point that you can cure. And if you can find those pain points and you can find how you can help them with that, then the value just is exponential. I mean, those are the best times ever. And that is super rewarding.
So something we say here too, Nathan, a lot, and you probably heard us say it, at the training, is consulting is a team sport. So as you think about having this impact on your clients and taking them through this framework and this process, it's actually a lot of work, and it's taking a lot of your experience, a lot of your energy, a lot of the structure you're providing. But I have a question kind of specific to strategic planning is, I know you've utilized a project manager throughout this process, someone that can support you along the way so you can more focus on maybe client-centric needs. Would you mind sharing just a little bit about the role a project manager has played throughout this process?
Yeah, so that role is completely new to Lally Group. Like we don't have project managers yet within the firm. But so fleshing that out, you guys gave us some tools and examples of what a project manager kind of looks like in the consulting area. And so we really fleshed that out a lot more to make it so my project manager, her name is Jackie, and she does an amazing job. Some of it is just dealing with the logistics and details that crop up either in conversations with clients or a logistic that we see, we need to circle back around on as we get closer to the engagement itself. So that's one area that Jackie's been a huge help, is to be able to just categorize and see where we're at, what needs to have happen. For me, on the Kobe, I'm a low green. So from every once in a while, she'll send me a message through Teams or chat and be able to say, hey, you know what, we really haven't talked to anybody here in a couple of weeks. I think we just need to get going, just have a conversation with someone about it, to be able to help kind of in that area too, just moving me forward. And it's been interesting on a couple of them. She's come on site, here now as we're kind of coming back out, or being part of the Zoom call, to be able to just be almost a solutions advisor, and just be someone for people within a company to be able to talk to about those, just the process and the framework as we're going through. And that's been extremely valuable too. But,
Yep. Yeah. And I know for Sandra and I, project managers, we need them. They add so much value to us, so much value to clients, in terms of keeping things on track and making sure we deliver what we say we're going to deliver and things of that sort. So I think I wanted to hear your thoughts on that. And I also wanted to highlight kind of the team you have in place to support you, as well. So one of the things you said you learned from the training, and this was mentioned in part one of the episode, was around just the process of pricing, kind of going through that. And we don't need to get into specific numbers, but I'd love to hear maybe some of the process steps you took to price kind of a newer service in your firm.
Part of that, and probably the main part for me, after a lot of years of looking at it through the accounting side, is to actually pause on the pricing and not have the pricing really come up until you've had 2 or maybe 3 conversations to be able to determine what they're looking for, what is their budget, what are they trying to accomplish, and the framework that we went through in the training class, in the consulting training class, really helped kind of guide how that conversation was going to go, to be able to make it so you understand all of the parameters that are going to go into creating that solution before you even get to a number, but then also kind of communicating expectations, being able to talk about those things and not have it so someone identifies a number first on a piece of paper versus dialogue about it. Those are the types of items that have really shifted for how we talk through the process on the pricing. And that was something new for us, that the training class really helped provide a little bit more of a framework as to how we would flesh that out in the consulting area. And ironically, that has definitely bled over to our advisory and some of our compliance stuff too.
Yep. And again, I keep using the word client centric, but pricing too soon, and it doesn't matter if it's too low, too high, often doesn't meet the client needs. And so it's focused on the client of, hey, we want to make sure that whatever scope we build, whatever price we build is actually in line with the needs that you have, with the wants that you have, and not just some arbitrary structure that we have in place that may be misaligned, overscoped, underscoped, things of that sort. So as we kind of round out our time together, because we only have a few minutes left, I want to capture from both of you any big learnings you have from over the years of doing strategic planning. Sandra, I'd like to start with you, and then Nathan, hear from you. What are, what big learnings do you have from doing strategic planning with clients that you would like to share with our listeners?
I guess the first thing I would say is, again, I will say it's a foundational service. And so if you can learn how to do strategic planning well, and you make that a priority with some of your best clients in getting that, you will find out so much more about them than you ever thought you knew. I mean, you might think you know a lot, but this will get you way more knowledge about your clients. So I say that. I would also say, don't undervalue the process of strategic planning. I had a client one time tell me, well, we're going to start doing strategic planning, but we're just going to give that away, and then we'll get the other services. I said, well, if you give that away, they're never going to pay for anything else that you do, because they're going to get more value out of that. And they honestly couldn't really understand the value that they had, that they were bringing to the engagement. And I would implore everyone listening right now, the value that you have is not in the numbers necessarily. It's in how to read the numbers and how to read the client. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about strategic planning. That's what I've learned. There is great value in the conversation, in the relationship, in the communication. That's where the value is.
That's great, Sandra. Nathan, how about for you?
For me, we've talked a lot about strategic planning, and that was an area of passion for me. But for anyone that is looking at going into the consulting area, find an area, an idea that you're passionate about, that is something that you believe in and you believe will bring value. That's the first thing. The second is to find someone that will be your champion within your firm. For me, it's our managing partner. And then, and really third is find a framework that'll allow you to take that service to market. For us at Lally Group, it was the consulting training, but maybe there's something else. But don't just have a dream about it, and don't just have someone that'll say, yeah, that's a great idea, but really try and find that process to be able to make it so it can be a part of your firm, it can be part of your firm's culture, and it can be part of the future of your firm.
Excellent advice. You said passion, you said a champion and, internally to support, right? And a framework to kind of launch into these new consulting services. Excellent advice, Nathan. All right, that concludes our time for this episode. Again, thank you both so much. Sandra, thanks for being on this episode.
Thank you so much, Jon. And thank you, Nathan. It was good to see you again.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Next time we can get together in person, we can continue this conversation. For our listeners out there, if you like these types of conversations, these types of episodes, please leave a comment, a review saying that you do. Please subscribe. We release new episodes every Tuesday morning. I think this is our 34th episode coming out. And we have not missed a Tuesday morning yet. So please stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.